I would like to welcome Dr. Mohammad Javad Zarif, the Foreign Minister of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Tihemauri ora, enamana, enareo, enarangati rama, tenakoto, tenakoto, tenakoto katoa. Excellencies, members of parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to you all. My name is Matiniko O'Brien, and I'm the Executive Director of the New Zealand Institute of International Affairs. First, I would like to acknowledge the support of members of Parliament for providing us with this superb venue. Thank you, Professor Bell, Dr. Kennedy Graham, Honorable Peter Dunn, Fletcher Tabuto, and David Seymour. It is great to see a full house here this evening. The Festival of the Arts is on this week, but given the interest and the size of this audience here, this may be the hottest ticket in town. And when it comes to the art of negotiation, there are few better proponents than our guest today. We're extremely fortunate to have an hour in the company of His Excellency, Dr. Mohammad Javad Zarif. Dr. Javad Zarif was appointed the Foreign Minister of Iran in the administration of President Hassan Rouhani in 2013. He led the Iranian negotiation with the P5+1 countries, which produced a joint comprehensive plan of action in 2015. The deal has been praised by some as the most important multilateral agreement in decades. A career diplomat, Mr. Javad Zarif served as Iran's UN ambassador from 2002 to 2007, after serving as Deputy Foreign Minister from 1992. Dr. Zarif holds a PhD in International Studies from the University of Denver and teaches international law and multilateral diplomacy in Tehran. His parents initially sent him to study computer science abroad as to not become a political person. Thankfully for the cause of diplomacy, he soon switched to international relations. He has written extensively on disarmament, human rights, international law, and regional conflicts. Dr. Javad Zarif and his American counterpart, John Kerry, were top joint contenders for the 2015 Nobel Peace Prize. The diplomatic breakthrough was a result of many factors, but principal amongst these has been the qualities of the individuals, the key diplomats leading the negotiations. This has been a huge win for diplomacy. As Winston Churchill once said, to jaw is always better than war. The positive developments on the last few years is much indebted to you, Dr. Javad Zarif. So on behalf of the National Office of the New Zealand Institute of International Affairs, it is most pleasing to see you here. New Zealand was pleased to play a role as UN Security Council President the resolution which endorsed a historic nuclear agreement, and New Zealand has had an embassy in Tehran since 1975, making it New Zealand's longest-standing mission in the Middle East. Dr. Zarif will speak for 30 minutes on what role now for Iran in the Middle East and the world. We will then have 20 minutes for a Q&A session chaired by the President of the New Zealand Institute of International Affairs, Honorable Sir Doug Kidd. Please put your phones on silent mode now, but do feel free to tweet about the event on #NZIA. And please now help me welcome the Foreign Minister of Iran, Dr. Mohammad Javad Zarif. Thank you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. A very good, is it evening yet or afternoon to all of you? It's a great pleasure and honor to share a few moments and few thoughts with you, and thank you for that gracious introduction. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to be with you. I want to share with you some thoughts about how it was possible for us to make the change in the nuclear negotiations, and whether we could use the model that we used for the nuclear negotiations and apply it to the situation in our region, and maybe, even if we're not too modest, draw larger lessons for how we conduct diplomacy in the international arena. Let me begin by giving a preface to that discussion by addressing the reality of our today's world. We all talk about globalization, mostly not knowing exactly the dimensions of what we're talking about. By globalization, most of us mean our environment is globalized. We cannot protect our environment when there is degradation going on everywhere. We cannot protect the environment if greenhouse gas emissions everywhere are on the rise. We cannot erect a big wall around our country or our city or our neighborhood to protect its environment. That's globalization for you. We also talk about globalization, that we cannot have prosperity when others are in dire poverty, because we lose markets and we lose consumers. That's, again, globalization for you. But we all neglect the fact that we cannot have security when others are insecure. We cannot establish countries or regions that are immune from threats, be it proliferation or terrorism or violence or inequality, where it's raging elsewhere in the world. If we all needed a wake-up call, I think we all got it without waking up, and that was September 11th. September 11th showed us all that even the most powerful country on the face of the earth cannot do the fundamental thing that any nation state is supposed to do, and that is to secure its own citizens. If you, like me, had lived in New York for many years and went to New York after September 11th and saw the faces of the New Yorkers frightened by the looks of any stranger, particularly if he looked like a Muslim, as I did, then you would know the feeling of insecurity, even insecurity of the citizens of the world's most powerful country, which has the capability of destroying the rest of the world in itself many times over. And here, let me make a pitch to you. As New Zealand, which has been an active member of the New Agenda Coalition calling for a world free from nuclear weapons, I think now it's the best time to push that agenda, and you will have a lot of people supporting you. But going back to my old argument, we live in a globalized world. In a globalized world, you cannot gain at the expense of others. It's impossible. It may be possible to make temporary gains, but at the end of the day, if you opt for a zero-sum game, you'll end up with a negative-sum outcome. That is, we either win together or lose together. And that's an argument, that's a prediction that you can apply almost everywhere. And I can assure you, you'll come with the same answer. You'll either gain together or lose together. And if we apply that to various international issues, you'll see the merit of that argument. Let me apply it to the nuclear case. In the nuclear issue, Iran had an objective we found to be fully justified. We said, we are an abiding member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and time and again, the International Atomic Energy Agency has indicated, in spite of all of the publicity to the contrary, that not a single gram of nuclear material has ever been diverted by Iran from peaceful activity to non-peaceful use. The worst IAEA conclusions about Iran still make that finding, the worst of them. They may say Iran had done some studies, but not a single gram of nuclear material was diverted from peaceful to non-peaceful activity. And that's all what NPT is all about. And that's all what IAEA safeguards are all about. All the propaganda notwithstanding, IAEA safeguards are not there to make sure that people are not studying. IAEA safeguards are there to make sure that people are not using nuclear materials for non-peaceful purposes. And Iran never did that. So we thought, since we never did that, we had the right to develop our own peaceful nuclear technology for peaceful purposes, particularly because of the fact that any avenue that we sought to use international assistance in that area was blocked to us. So we thought that we had the right to try to develop it on our own. Maybe discreetly a bit, because we didn't want the sources to be closed off by the United States. So in our own mind, we had every right. And anybody else who was questioning our program, well, they had no foundation for their argument, so we shouldn't pay any attention to it. On the other hand, the United States equated our nuclear program with a nuclear weapons program and said all along that Iran should not have a nuclear weapons program and believed that anything that has anything to do with nuclear can be a nuclear weapons program. So they said that objective, Iran, should not have a nuclear program, period, peaceful or otherwise. I'm not making an assertion that I cannot support. President Obama said in 2013, in a speech that he made in the Saban Center of the Brookings Institute in Washington, that if I had a chance, I would not have left a nut and bolt in Iran's nuclear program standing. So he didn't say weapons or anything. Any nut and bolt in any of Iran's nuclear program. These were the two objectives which led to a zero-sum outcome. The United States believed that if Iran had any gains in its nuclear program, it was a loss for it because it would lead Iran to weapons. We believed if we gave up any of our right to the United States, then would abandon our rights because the United States wanted none of our nuclear program. Those objectives were mutually exclusive, were both zero-sum at the end of the day. And what did it gain us? Let's do some calculus, very simple math. When the United States started to impose sanctions on Iran on the nuclear issue, the United States, as you know, imposes more sanctions on more countries than any other country. Probably the United States unilaterally imposes more sanctions on more countries than all other countries combined. But since the United States started imposing sanctions on Iran for its nuclear program, Iran had 200 centrifuges, hardly operating. When the United States started to negotiate with us in a serious way in 2013, we had 20,000 centrifuges. So a net loss for the United States zero enrichment policy of 19,800 centrifuges. Simple arithmetics. What did we gain? When we started the program, or when we started resisting US pressure, we had a positive 7% growth. In 2013, when we started the negotiations, we had a minus 6.8% growth. So while sanctions did not change our policy, did not bring Iran to its knees, it was capable of putting a lot of pressure on our economy. At the end of the day, nobody really gained. None of us really gained. And if we had continued to define the problem in a zero-sum perspective, we would have continued to fail to find a solution. Because you cannot find mutual solutions if you define the problem in a way that is mutually exclusive. So the beginning of the new road for a resolution was to redefine the problem. And in a meeting on the sidelines of the Security Council, where New Zealand has had the privilege of sitting in that room now for the past year and a half, and we are grateful to New Zealand for having played an active role, including for the Foreign Minister to be there on July 20th to adopt Security Council Resolution 2231, presiding over the Security Council. We went to that room on the side of the Security Council, and I proposed that we redefine the problem in a way that we define a common objective for all sides so that we could have a common approach to settling the problem. And the common objective, from Iran not having a nut and bolt in its nuclear program because it will lead to nuclear weapons, to Iran having the right to advance as much as it wants in the nuclear arena. We defined the objective as it is reflected in the first agreement, JPOA, and in the second agreement, JCPOA, was that Iran will have a nuclear program that will always remain peaceful. So a simple redefinition of a problem, understanding that our world is no longer amenable to zero-sum outcomes, enabled us to look together for a solution that either side could claim to be victory for it. That is why I don't mind if the United States says we close 4 Iranian paths to nuclear weapons. Because we had closed before them all the routes to nuclear weapons. Because we believe that nuclear weapons will not augment our security. We believe they never have for anybody and never will. They don't even give you regime security. Did they give regime security to the former Soviet Union? I mean, they had enough arsenal to destroy the entire world. But did it give them regime security? So all that, in my view, is simply nonsense. Doesn't give regime security, doesn't give national security, doesn't give external security to any country. In a world where non-state actors have now become the primary threats to international peace and security. So it's just ridiculous to think about nuclear weapons as sources of security. Now we all need to be concerned if these non-state actors get a hold of the nuclear weapons that are available. So all of us could face Armageddon if they actually did. And as long as nuclear weapons exist on the face of the earth, there is no guarantee that these people will not get a hold over them. And that is why I believe the New Agenda Coalition and New Zealand are very right in demanding the removal of all nuclear weapons. So we never wanted nuclear weapons, and the United States can claim that it closed 4 routes, 5 routes, 10 routes, 100 routes of Iran achieving nuclear weapons. At the same time, we can claim victory because we are maintaining our nuclear program, albeit in a more transparent and limited way, moving in a more economical way to advancement of our nuclear program, peaceful, making it transparent, and at the same time removing the smokescreen for those who have hidden behind the smokescreen of Iran's nuclear program to justify their policies in the Middle East and in our region. And that is why you had so much resistance coming from certain players to a nuclear deal. That is why you had so much resistance in the US Congress, pressured by certain external players so that they would reject the nuclear deal, because they wanted to keep the smokescreen of Iran being the troublemaker, the threat, so that behind that smokescreen, everything else could be justified. So we were able to define the problem in a way that everybody could claim victory. Somebody in the speech that I just made in Thailand on the same issue, the lady who introduced me gave a beautiful example. And let me give you that example because I think it's very pertinent. A boy comes home thirsty and sees his sister having used all the water in the home to make jam, and sees a nice orange sitting there, and he says, I can quench my thirst using this orange. So he grabs the orange, running in order to eat it. And the sister, younger sister, runs after him, takes the orange back. I want it for the jam. And he takes, again, using his greater power, takes it back, and the sister goes to her room crying. Mother comes in, says, you gotta go talk to your sister. And the boy says, why? I can cut the orange in half, give half to my sister, and keep the other half, and everybody will be happy. Mother says, no, go talk to your sister. Boy goes, talks to the sister. Turns out that the sister only needs to peel the orange so that she can use the peel to add zest to the jam. So the boy not only gets the entire orange, he gets somebody to peel it for him. So not 50%, but 110%. That's what you can gain if you define the problems in a non-zero-sum game, in a non-zero-sum outcome. And that's what we did. We defined the nuclear issue. People believe that it will never be resolved. People believe that it was impossible to bring these two contradictory objectives to some sort of a marriage. But we did. We resolved it, we implemented it, and I think it would be a lasting solution because it's based on a different definition of the problem. Now, I think it can be applied to our region. Now, people in our region are trying, some of them are panicking that Iran is gaining influence in the region. So they want to maintain a crisis. Look at what has happened in our region over the past 2 years. The price of oil, partly due to economic factors, but partly due to political considerations, have been driven down to hurt Iran. Now we're standing here. But those who had the biggest role in bringing the price of oil down are now queuing behind international monetary institutions trying to borrow money. People said Iran had too much influence in the region. So they helped create ISIS. And look what's happening now. ISIS is becoming a menace, not only to the Bashar Assad government in Syria, but to all its neighbors, and even beyond the region. From Sydney to San Bernardino, and anywhere in between, you see ISIS is wreaking havoc in the entire world. Because in a globalized world, you cannot contain threats. I mean, you cannot, for God's sake, even contain a disease. You remember what happened to SARS. You remember what happened to other diseases. You cannot contain them in one region. It's only a matter of time. Ebola, other diseases, it's only a matter of time that it would spread, and the time is very short. Now, just think about the danger of these hardened criminals, demagogues, or their recruits, who have gone to Syria from all over the world. And I always ask my Western friends to think of what went wrong, that people who are beheading innocent individuals in Syria and Iraq are speaking English and French in a perfect accent. What did go wrong? That's the subject of another lecture, maybe next time I come here. But just imagine, I mean, the refugee problem that Europe is facing today would be minuscule in comparison to the threat that one day these people will go back home. Hardened, more sophisticated, both in public demagoguery through the internet, because they're very sophisticated, savvy users of the internet, and more hardened in their ideology, and much better trained in the art of violence. What will happen? It will truly become a global menace, if it's not already. So we need to recognize that we simply cannot, it is impossible to gain at the expense of others. Impossible to gain security at the expense of others. We have to learn in our region that ISIS is a threat and not a bargaining chip. And unless we understand that, unless we define somebody's security as our insecurity, and our security as somebody else's insecurity, and then give it the nice word deterrence, and unless we recognize that no longer makes any sense, we will be faced with the same problem over and over again. We can now start building on our commonalities. And I believe, certainly in our region, when we call each other brothers and sisters belonging to the same faith, hopefully if people do not have the ability to, excommunicate the Shias out of Islam, which is unfortunately something that some people are doing. But if we could do it in a world where we called each other enemies, you remember? Axis of evil and great Satan. It was possible to gain common ground. We didn't resolve other problems, but we were able to redefine one problem and resolve it. So in a region we call each other brothers and sisters, we certainly can redefine the problem, redefine our security in non-zero positive-sum games, and achieve them. We all need stable oil markets. We have now learned the hard way that bringing down oil prices will not benefit anybody. It may harm somebody more than it harms others, and actually it's harming us least. interestingly enough. We've been able to bring our dependence on oil from 50% to 34%. Better for our economy. But it's hurting others really bad. But it's hurting everybody. We have to go through austerity in order to be able to maintain our economy with reduction of our revenues by 70%. We can all accept that we need free flow of oil and other commodities through the Persian Gulf and Strait of Hormuz. This is for prosperity of all of us. We can all understand that if a sectarian divide in the Muslim world takes root, then nobody is safe anywhere in the Muslim world or beyond. We can all understand that if ISIS takes over Damascus or Baghdad, then nobody will be safe anywhere in the Muslim world, that instead of a terrorist organization, you will have terrorist state with all the instruments of state power. If we all understood that nothing in there is a gain for one at the expense of a loss for another, and it's either a gain for everybody or a loss for everybody, then we can redefine the problem in a way that we can resolve. Then we can redefine the problem in a way to prevent ISIS from getting new recruits, from getting new money, from selling its oil, and all of us getting together, working together, preserving territorial integrity of Syria, preserving territorial integrity of Iraq, helping all of our friends in the region to fight extremism. And let us not forget that today, our friends in Turkey lost many people due to the same terrorist violence. Our friends in the entire region are vulnerable to this threat. And we all need to get together, and I was very happy to have this opportunity to have a long conversation with our Turkish friends, the Prime Minister who visited Iran, and we had a good chat about how to redefine the problem in a way that we can all appreciate. Now in Syria, in spite of having differences of views, we all have shared objectives. We all want to see territorial integrity of Syria. We all want to prevent the breakup of the country and Iraq and other countries into smaller mini-states. We all want to see the people of Syria deciding about their future. So there is enough to join us, rather than a single issue that divides us. And we can find a formula to resolve that single issue that divides us, if we looked at it from a non-zero-sum perspective. And I think it's possible, and not only it's possible, it's absolutely imperative. Unless we did that, unless we started looking at our problems differently and defining our problems differently, then we would be left with a world that would be very difficult to live in. And I think we don't have to. Thank you.
Thank you. The Minister will now take questions. We've got microphones. I think you'll find this place, you will need one, otherwise your voice will sort of disappear. So I'll work across from this side. Any over in that block? Right at the back. Young lady, is it right at the back? Far side with a hand up.
Kia ora, Dr. Zarif, and thank you very much for your presentation. Welcome to New Zealand. My name's Amanda. I'm actually with Amnesty International, and my question is on the recent coverage over a potential deal that Australia is proposing to send failed asylum seekers back to Iran. And I was just wondering, should a deal be signed, how would the Iranian government seek to guarantee the protection of individuals who are returned, noting that ongoing concerns around freedom of expression and targeting of religious minorities, crackdowns, etc.? Thank you.
Well, on the eve of my trip to Australia, you're asking the right question, in fact. We believe that Iranians who have left the country for probably economic reasons to get a better life in Australia or elsewhere, always welcome to come back. There's nothing against them. We believe that we got to be careful about what we preach. Because if we propagate that in Iran everybody's rights are being trampled upon and we are protectors of these rights, then we're inviting people to lie about their situation and come and try to gain somebody's compassion by claiming the rights are violated. So then we will have to live up to what we said in the beginning. But we're not going to hold anybody responsible for that. I told the Australian government and others that you've got to be more careful when you make statements about Iran. Iran is the only country in the region that has serious elections, probably with the exception of Turkey, because the ambassador is sitting right in front. No, over the past 37 years, every president, and I say that decidedly, every president has elected his opposition into office. So we have been able to allow people's frustrations to be vented through the ballot box rather than in the streets or through violence. And that's one of the reasons that thankfully we are immune from extremism and violence in Iran. But a lot of stuff has been said about the human rights situation in Iran. I never claimed that we do not need improvement. Actually, as somebody who taught human rights when it was not fashionable to teach human rights in Iran, I believe that we can make a lot of improvement. And so does the president. And that is why the president has promised, has campaigned on a platform of a Charter of Citizens' Rights, which he will be presenting to the general public. But people here in the West created an image of Iran. You know, we're the only country in the region that has elections, and we're the only country in the region that has a special rapporteur on human rights. Isn't that a contradiction? I mean, you find that a serious testament to the credibility of the human rights machinery of the United Nations if we're the only ones, not any of our neighbors who don't know of elections, but we're the only ones under scrutiny? And this is the price that people have to pay. You advertise that Iran violates human rights, so you get people who want to take refuge in your societies from our human rights abuses. So what are you complaining about? Isn't that a genuine question to be asked? Now, to answer the specific question, we will not take anybody back to Iran against their will, unless they're a criminal and wanted by Interpol. So we are ready to encourage Iranians in Australia, in PNG, anywhere, while we believe that their rights should be respected and their personality should be respected and they should not be subjected to inhuman or degrading treatment. But we're ready to tell them that nothing awaits them of punishment in Iran. Encourage them to go back to Iran. They have not committed any crime by trying to go and seek a better life. So they can always come back to Iran, but we will not impose on them to come back. We will not pressure them to come back to Iran. Other countries are free to apply their laws to deport people, illegal aliens in their country. That's their right. As a country that is host to 3 million illegal refugees, we certainly understand. You see, some in the West don't recognize the fact that this year we had 370,000 illegal Afghan students attending our primary and secondary schools. Now people are shouting about a few hundred refugees coming to their territory. 370,000 illegal students this year attending Iranian schools. So we know what a refugee problem is. And people have the right, within the confines of international law and the Convention on the Protection of Refugees, to expel illegal immigrants. That's their right. But we do not have the responsibility of forcing people to come back to Iran. If our citizens want to come back to Iran, then we will accept them with open arms.
Thank you. We go right down the other end now. Anyone in that block over there? It's a very big, long audience. Right in the back row on this end.
Foreign Minister, it's very heartening to hear Iran is thinking of the world as a globe upstanding. This is as tall as I am. It's very heartening to hear that you are thinking of the world as a global space, and that you see that what happens in one part of the world affects us all. But I just wonder, in the New Zealand press last week, we had it reported that
Ma'am, I can't hear you. Can you come close so at least I can hear you in person rather than through the loudspeaker?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, apologise. I'm just saying that it was heartening to hear that you were talking about Iran being part of a global world where one thing affects you, it affects us. We're all affected by the same sort of things. But I just wonder, last week in the New Zealand press, it was reported that missiles were launched from Iran with annihilate Israel. How do you explain that?
Well, let me give you the missile answer. We spend a fraction of anybody's defense budget in the region on defense. A fraction. A tenth of Saudi Arabia, maybe a fifth of United Arab Emirates, not to mention even Israel. We spend a fraction. And our means of defense are missiles. In our history, we have not invaded any country. We have not taken military action against any country for 250 years. But we defend ourselves. And we defend ourselves with everything we got. Many people do not want to remember, unfortunately we do in Iran, that for 8 years we were subjected to the most brutal aggression in recent memory. We were gassed in large scale with chemical weapons. I remember going to the president of the Security Council as a young, recently appointed chargé d'affaires in New York in 1985. And told him that chemical weapons are being used against Iran. And you know the answer I received? I'm not authorized by the Council to listen to you. That's the reaction we got from the international community. So we have every right to defend ourselves and to be prepared for the means of our defense. We have not threatened anybody even a single time that we would take military action against them. But we are being threatened on a daily basis by Israel that it will take military action against Iran. It's being given the necessary ammunition by the United States to attack us, and nobody is asking Netanyahu why he's doing that. No one. People have been begging Netanyahu for 7-8 years. Please don't attack Iran. Why in the hell should he even say that he should attack Iran? Where is the justification? Is it the law of the jungle? Do we not have a requirement in international law that prohibits the use of force? I mean, that's a principle of general international law that is applicable, violation of which would constitute an international crime. But nobody is questioning why Israel is threatening to use force against Iran. People are simply asking him, please, Mr. Prime Minister, why are people not asking the United States? When the United States says all options are on the table, what does it mean? Have you stopped and questioned what it means to say all options are on the table. Do we live in a jungle? All options are on the table means the threat or use of force. Threat or use of force is illegal. We don't live in a jungle. We live in a society that is ruled, at least in principle, by international law. So countries should not be allowed to threaten to use force. But they are doing it as a matter of policy. If a US president doesn't say all options are on the table, it's as if they have committed what? Apostasy. So I think it is important for us to ask the right question. Iran has never threatened to attack anybody, nor will it ever threaten to attack anybody. But we will defend ourselves. Anybody who is foolish enough, like Saddam Hussein, to attack us will learn that Iranian people will not sit idly for people to bomb us.
Thank you. Yes. That's you? Yep, that's right. Big voice now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zarif. Your presence is really, really wonderful here. I give lectures in the cruise ships, and I have been doing this advertising of our culture, not advertising, telling them that we are not wild, we're not against anybody. So I really want to ask two questions from you. Lately, this missile that Iran said, and immediately Israel claimed that, I know you have been asked this question in the parliament this morning. Is it true that on the missile, there was anything written in Hebrew? I mean, not necessarily the content of it that they are claiming. I know that in the past, Ahmadinejad always had said a lot of crazy things, but the present government is very, very, very humble, very, very nice. Is that true that there was anything written on that with Hebrew writing that Israel has to be destroyed?
Well, actually, I've seen those reports also here, and I haven't been to Iran to check them out. But the foreign policy of the Islamic Republic of Iran is articulated either by the leader or the president or the foreign minister. These are three individuals who are responsible in the Islamic Republic of Iran for articulating foreign policy, and none of them have articulated anything that would amount to waging a threat to use force, except in self-defense. And I do not know of any other organ of the Iranian government who has threatened to use force against anybody other than in self-defense. We have said that we will defend ourselves. And anybody who's crazy enough to attack us, we will attack back. Using conventional weapons, we hope that these conventional weapons will never be used, because we truly believe that in a war, everybody loses. The winners and losers of a war are losers. We went through an 8-year war. We defended ourselves. We are proud of the people who defended us. But we know at the end of the day, we suffered because of the war. We still have people who are dying because of chemical weapons in Iran. So in a war, nobody wins. And we know that, but we will defend ourselves. We say that without embarrassment. Anybody who's foolish enough to attack Iran will get it from us.
I have one other quick question, please.
You only get one, there's a lot of other people. Thank you very much. Yes, right there.
Dr. Zarif, sorry, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes,
with respect to the ongoing conflicts in Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, how do you see the future of Iranian relations with Saudi Arabia unfolding in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, we don't see any reason for Iran and Saudi Arabia not to have positive relations. We believe Iran and Saudi Arabia are two important players in our region whose interests are not mutually exclusive. So we believe there is room for accommodation, but we cannot accommodate anybody if they expect us to leave the region. That is impossible. You cannot accommodate anybody by committing suicide. We are an important force in this region. We will continue to be an important force in this region. We hope that Saudi Arabia decides to play a positive role in the region, and we believe there is plenty of room for Saudi Arabia to play a positive role, starting with ending the carnage in Yemen. Because the carnage in Yemen is taking more lives than people want to imagine, and unfortunately, there is not enough coverage about the carnage that is going on in Yemen.
Thank you very much.
I'll keep to my word and tack down the, yes, right over in the back block there.
Thank you. Paddy Payne from the Baha'i community. Last week, the Special Rapporteur for the situation of the human rights in the Islamic Republic of Iran expressed, and I quote, serious concern at the continuing systematic discrimination, harassment, and targeting that adherents of the Baha'i faith continue to face in the country. What steps is the Iranian government taking to address this human rights issue?
Well, first of all, I refer you to the point that I made about rapporteur. The credibility of the institution of special rapporteurs becomes seriously undermined if you see that in our region, the only country that has a special rapporteur is Iran. Not those who are beheading preachers, but Iran. So don't expect me to give a lot of currency to the statement that you just read. But I can say that nobody in Iran is persecuted because of his religion or faith or lack thereof. There are, in Iran, we have 3 seats reserved for Christians in our parliament, 1 seat reserved for Jews in our parliament, 1 seat reserved for Zoroastrians in our parliament. Every 150, almost 150,000 Iranian Muslim gets 1 representative in the parliament, whereas less than 20,000 Jews get 1, a lower number of Armenians and Assyrians get 3, and something in the same neighborhood of Zoroastrians get 1. We have recognized religions, the 3 that I named, who get seats in the parliament assigned to them. It doesn't mean that others cannot exercise their religion or faith or belief. It means that we will not give them the recognition to conduct their personal affairs according to their own canon law. A Jew can inherit based on Jewish canon law, can marry and divorce based on Jewish canon law. A Christian can do the same, a Zoroastrian can do the same. This is what we accord to religious minorities, and that is why our definition of a religious minority is a limited definition, because it is a definition that would come with a lot of privileges that would not be applicable in a secular society. So I want you to look at this from that perspective, because a lot of people say this and other faiths are not recognized in Iran as official religion. It means that not that their followers cannot follow their faith as long as they do it without disturbing public, but they are not recognized so that they can conduct their affairs, their personal affairs, in the manner prescribed by their religion. This is all there is. Now, I'm not contending that in Iran no violations of human rights takes place. I'm not even against Muslims. Violations take place, but I contend that they're not systematic to justify the presence of a special rapporteur. And I want to bring you back to the point that if Iran is the only country in our region with a special rapporteur, there is something wrong.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. With the red scarf.
I would like to first thank you for starting a new chapter for Iranians living abroad who were equally affected by the sanctions and the negative media representations, and at times have been object of mistrust and cynicism brought about by isolation and as a consequence of ignorance. So thank you. My question is, the sanctions took a toll on the Iranian people more than anybody else, and had and still has had a detrimental effect on Iranians living both in Iran and abroad. Now that the sanctions have been lifted or are being lifted, I know many Iranians feel psychologically relieved, but what other change do you think the average Iranian is going to or should expect to feel in the near future as they go about their daily lives?
Well, I believe sanctions and the climate that existed was basically a psychological climate. And the breaking of that psychological climate of Iranophobia is extremely important for all of us inside and outside Iran. Now, I hope that the Iranians are going to benefit from economic advancement caused by less pressure on their country. We hope to be doing business with the rest of the world, but we're not counting on outsiders to help us improve our economic situation. We believe it should be home-driven. It should be based on the capabilities of our people, which is enormous. And we rely on them to advance the country. We simply hope that people won't impede it, particularly the United States. And we believe that they are under a treaty obligation not to impede it.
We're going to have opportunity for a couple more questions, and then we're having you might call it a mini press conference, so there'll be some questions from the media to our guests, so you don't have to fight to get in the first batch. Well, actually, we've had one here close. Let me try down the far block again. This was a gentleman on the... somebody in that... I'm pointing at them. Put your hand up in the middle there. About there, that's right. Yeah. There. Sorry, we're getting a microphone down to... yes, Sononi's there. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I congratulate you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I congratulate you for concluding the nuclear deal, of course. How do you envisage that positive environment that the nuclear deal created will be affecting the human rights situation in Iran? Of course, that's a broad question. And if you allow me, I will make it perhaps more clearer, specifically toward the ethnic minorities and education in mother tongues, which apparently it's not allowed in Iran at the moment.
First of all, I think the human rights situation should improve in every country, irrespective of existence or lack of existence of a nuclear deal. Because human rights themselves are the solid foundations. The respect for human rights is a solid foundation for the legitimacy and longevity of any government, and I think any government respecting human rights will guarantee better outcomes for the society. I can tell you that in the Iranian constitution, teaching of the languages, mother tongues of ethnic minorities is legal, and it's a right accorded to them. If it's not observed, then it's a violation of the constitution, and which has to be corrected and rectified. My information is that there is no law or practice against such teaching. Maybe violations take place, but there is no law or practice of the government against such teaching. And I refer you back to the fact that only 2 weeks ago, close to and people, New Zealanders should know that voting in Iran is not compulsory, and neither is registering to vote. So unlike here or Australia, where you are supposed to vote, not compulsory to vote. But close to 70% of the population turned out and voted in all ethnic minority-dominated towns and villages. People turned out in large numbers and voted through the ballot box for their representatives to represent them in the parliament. I think that's an important characteristic of Iran that you cannot find elsewhere in the region. Now, are we not required to make other improvements? Of course we should. Of course we should. I mean, we are a young democracy, an old country, but very young. Maybe our democracy is different from the way you define democracy, but if you define democracy from elections, you may not like our vetting process. Fine. We may not like the vetting process that brings some people to be candidates in other countries. And so, I mean, it's not for everybody to like your vetting process, but the question is, people had a choice, and they made their choice, and the choice was surprising to many. And that's important. People tend to use that opportunity. So I believe in the ethnic-dominated regions, teaching of ethnic languages is a constitutional right which will be observed.
Okay. Do you want a question? Yes, right. You're the last one before I move over to the media. Yeah.
Ask an easy question so that I'll go happy.
Can you hear me?
Nice and close.
Yes?
No.
We can hear you, but people in the back won't.
I'm David Kepper. Minister, I know and many people know that Iran is a very powerful influence in the Middle East. And the Hassan Rouhani's government have created a very good image, as far as I'm concerned. Unfortunately, at the moment, hardliners are making statements which are provocative and probably unnecessary. Is it possible for the moderate government to control the hardliners a bit? I would like that.
You see, if we made a practice of controlling people speaking, then tomorrow we will be controlled. We take pride in the fact that Iran is not a monolith. But we take pride also in the fact that at the end of the day, rational choice is made by the people. We gave the opportunity to everybody to pronounce themselves on the nuclear deal. And I was subjected to the harshest criticism that any foreign minister has been subjected to, probably ever, anywhere. From treason all the way down. I mean, you can't go worse than treason. But at the end of the day, the nuclear deal was approved. So I think we have a much stronger base for respecting that deal and for implementing and fulfilling our obligations under that deal, having allowed everybody, skeptics, naysayers, to say their part, and then having made the decision, informed by dissent, informed by those who object. I think that's a better way. And I think our hardliners, if you want to call them hardliners, segments of the population who are more skeptical about the West, have a right to pronounce themselves and have a right to say, and then people will make a choice. And I think people will make the right choice at the end of the day.
Thank you for that. Now we'll take some questions from representatives of the media at the back. Yes.
What?
Yeah. We'll get you a microphone which you can pass from one to the other.
Well, if I wait a bit more, then I won't be able to go to Australia because they won't allow us to land in Canberra.
Well, yeah, so you can stay. Okay.
Thank you.
Prime Minister, you mentioned you'd be willing to encourage asylum seekers or economic migrants back from PNG or Australia. Would that include money, for example, or setting them up with a house? What kind of encouragement are you willing to propose?
No, we'll give them a letter to allow them to come to Iran. We didn't take them there so that we give them money to come back. Those who advertised for them to go should give them money to come back. But those who went to Europe, we are providing them with tickets to come back if they don't have the money to buy their tickets.
Okay. Next person, one question each. You got one? No? Yes.
Minister, you addressed why you fired those ballistic missiles, but I think the ballistic missiles, you addressed why you fired them, but I think just as concerning or more concerning for many people was what was written on them in Hebrew, that Israel must be destroyed. I'd like you to address who wrote that and why.
I think I addressed that issue 3 times already.
I don't feel like...
So you didn't like it, but it doesn't mean that I didn't address it.
No,
maybe if I address it 10 more times, you won't like it, but...
I felt...
No, I did address it, you didn't listen.
Yeah.
So if you want to repeat one question 4 more times, you can, but I ask you to go ask Netanyahu why is he threatening to use force against Iran every day. Go ask Obama why he is threatening to use force against Iran every day. Why do they say all options are on the table? This is the pertinent question, not the question from a country that has never attacked another country and its foreign minister is telling you that we do not have the option of using force unless in self-defense.
Right. Anybody else?
Ask anybody who can make the same statement.
Good afternoon, Foreign Minister. Secretary of State John Kerry has said that the launching of the ballistic missiles, because of the range they have, is a breach of the agreement. What's your response?
Secretary of State never said that, because if he said that, it would be a lie. And John Kerry doesn't lie. He never said that ballistic missiles are a breach of the agreement. He contended that it's a breach of the Security Council resolution, and he's wrong.
Could you explain why?
Because the Security Council resolution, there was a Security Council resolution 1929, which has been annulled, which no longer exists. In 1929, Iran was required not to fire any missile that was capable of delivering nuclear weapons. That's 1929, dead. 2231, which is now in force, asks Iran, not requires, asks Iran, and there is a difference in terminology and a difference in legal connotation, not to test missiles that have been designed to be capable of carrying nuclear weapons. None of our missiles, because we designed them, and we do not have nuclear warheads, so we never designed any missile to be capable of delivering nuclear warheads, because we don't have nuclear warheads to begin with. So they're not designed to be capable of. So according to the letter of Security Council Resolution 2231, which we negotiated, and this was the product of long and hard negotiations, it's not a violation of the resolution, and it's not a legally binding resolution, part of the resolution, the part that deals with missiles anyway, but even the non-binding character of that paragraph is not violated, because these missiles are not designed to be capable of carrying nuclear warheads.
Okay.
You met the Minister of Trade this afternoon and the Minister of Primary Industry and discussed trade. The Prime Minister said in his press conference that he's very optimistic that trade between our two countries will improve. How then do you see that unfolding? And he also said the Foreign Minister was going to Iran. How, at the same time as addressing the trade question, could you also give us an impression of how you see the political relations between the two countries unfolding?
Well, I think we have possibilities in both areas. New Zealand is now a member of the Security Council. We've had good consultations on the issues in the region and issues that affect global peace and security, including the issue of disarmament, on which Iran and New Zealand have identical views, that there has to be a movement towards a world free from all weapons of mass destruction, which we readily support. On trade, there will be a business delegation coming to Iran. There are vast possibilities for business-to-business contact, for private sector, public sector cooperation, ranging from the traditional areas of oil and gas on one side and meat and dairy products on the other side, to a whole range of new possibilities in science and technology, education, tourism, other possibilities. So the possibilities are vast, and I saw in the meeting that I had with the Middle East Business Forum this morning, serious interest on the part of the business community here, and I can tell you there is serious business on the part of the Iranian business community to engage in mutually beneficial trade that will benefit not only both countries, but also will benefit prosperity of the regions.
Thank you.
Minister, sorry, can you say whether you knew of the timing of the ballistic missile testings before you came?
What?
It's a different slide. And has it impacted on...
No, I can't hear you. Could you?
Did you know of the timing of the ballistic missile test?
No, I
before you
did not.
left? Was it the Islamic, was it the guards?
No, my friend, it's a routine test that they do in order to upkeep their defense capabilities. That's what the military does. It has nothing to do with foreign office. That's military test done within Iranian territory in full conformity with our rights, so I didn't have to know about it.
And has it impacted on what is for you a relationship building tour around the Asia Pacific?
Well, I hope not, because that's a part of, you see, if anybody asks Iran to give up its defense, then they will be asking too much, and they know they're asking too much. Missiles, as I said, you've got to look at the entirety of the picture, and unfortunately this is the fifth time I'm explaining this, but since the question is redundant, my answer will be redundant. We spent a fraction of the expenditure others have on their defense. You know, in our region, people spend $80 billion buying toys from outside, $50 billion. Ours doesn't even get to 10. So I think you're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone who hasn't had a question who wants one?
Trump
No?
or Clinton?
No, I said one. I can count. But I will, there was one very patient gentleman here who probably didn't assert himself strong enough, so I'll reward his patience. Yes, you. Sanoni, would you drop the microphone down to the gentleman on the end of the row down here? He'll put his hand up. That's you. That's the man, yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Zarif, the nuclear deal you made with P5+1 is one of the largest diplomatic success. International community, international business are now ready to have cooperations or engagement to Iran. But for this purpose, we need a positive and cooperative atmosphere. And unfortunately, the recent missile test directly goes against it. Even though there are several Japanese companies which are willing to do business there, are coming to be a bit more cautious. Why did you do that at this particular juncture? I hear your explanation on that, why you did that. I hear that it was not against the situation, but why did you do that?
If you ask the same question in 100 different ways, you get the same answer. We will not, you see, my friends, let me stand up so that you can see me. You were not the subject of 8 years of war, where your cities were showered with missiles, carrying chemical warheads, and you did not have a single missile to retaliate so that maybe Saddam Hussein would stop. We went to one country after another begging, insisting, begging for a single Scud missile to defend our people. Begging. Now, you want us to get a few dollars to Iran to abandon defending our people. We really hope and wish for a day when nobody will spend any money on any of these weapons. Actually, we're far ahead of many people because we spend a fraction of their expenditure on weapons. But we are entitled to the rudimentary means of defense, which we need in order to prevent another Saddam Hussein around the corner attacking us with chemical weapons. Because the international community has failed miserably in protecting the Iranian people, in safeguarding international humanitarian law. Saddam Hussein became the worst enemy of humanity, not when he was invading Iranian territory, killing Iranians with chemical weapons, but when he attacked Kuwait. For 8 years, he was people's darling. He was people's sweetheart. Go explain that to the Iranians and tell them for business community to feel nice about Iran, you should allow another Saddam Hussein to attack you. They'll tell you that we don't want that investment, but we are the safest, most stable, most business-friendly country in the region, where the investment will have the highest returns, and these weapons will never be used, because we will never, repeat, never, and get the same statement from those who are complaining, never use them against anybody, unless in self-defense, and we're sure that nobody has the guts again to attack us.
Now, thank you. Thank you. Normally I would propose the vote of thanks, but our Executive Director has a very special connection with Iran, and I pass that privilege to her tonight, Matty Nico O'Brien.
Thank you very much.